Well guys, the time has come. I've officially updated my website. As you can see, it looks a lot more simple, and I've also added some new shirts. As you can see, they're epic. They're also on sale. The Liberal Tears mugs and everything, the original is still on there, and I actually have something very special to show you guys. I have one in real life. So here it is. This is what it looks like. As you can see, it's printed extremely high quality, and what I didn't know is that I actually have it on both sides. So if you're right-handed or left-handed, you'll be able to see a Liberal Tears mug from either side. And don't forget, you can also order it without the smiley face if you don't like that. But it's actually the most popular one. It was pretty funny. So here you go. Here it is. Check out the new website. You can read the description if you want. Check it out. Thank you guys. Let's get into the video. See you later.
99 cents for every dollar the man makes. Now that's the average. That's the average.
It's not even the average.
See, the interesting thing is that pay is close to equal right after you graduate from college among college-educated men and women. That gap widens when men and women hit their mid-30s, which is when people start having kids. So how should we think about this wage gap? Should we put it down to personal choices, or does sex discrimination play a role? Let's give it to you, Julie.
Well, it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me to hear a lesbian skeptical about family values. Since after their relationships start, lesbian bed death sets in. There's look, what you have to understand about the wage gap is that it doesn't, first of all, it doesn't exist. It's based on a misunderstanding between wages and earnings. These are two different words in the dictionary. If you want to look something up, look that up. If you take all of the money that women earn and all of the money that men earn, and you do a simple division, yes, you will find that the numbers are different, and that's because women make different life choices. If, however, you start to drill down to pay, you discover that if there is a wage gap at all, it is in favor not of men, but of women under the age of 30, at least in America. You also discover that when you control for women's different life choices, for instance, women tend not to graduate in engineering, and nobody is holding them back from applying for computer science or engineering or physics or any of those subjects. If you believe that there is a patriarchal conspiracy to keep women out of those subjects, you have to explain why there isn't one in veterinary science and biology, where women dominate. You discover that women make different life choices, and sometimes there are uncomfortable and unpopular truths that you have to factor in as an economist to the stuff. Women don't work as hard. Now, that's an unpopular thing to say, but they don't work the same hours as men. They take longer holidays, whether or not they've had babies, and of course they have children. And I, as a compassionate person, don't mind building in some things into the tax system and into the way the government works to accommodate that and to reward women for doing, for performing the essential function of our species. But that doesn't mean that private sector employers should pay them when they're not working. Now, to address the point very specifically, you cannot pay a woman and a man differently for doing the same job. That's against the law, and it doesn't happen. There are some cases in which women don't put in the hours it takes to make partner. And when you get to those higher professions, which Julie says she doesn't care about, but she will invoke to win an argument, when you get to those higher levels of employment, sometimes women just don't want to do the 80-hour weeks that men do. Now, part of that is probably biologically rooted. Julie doesn't like biological arguments, but there is very clear evidence that, from the evidence of our bodies, but also brain science, that men and women are different in quite significant cognitive ways. But there's also evidence that even in the most enlightened and equal societies, women stubbornly refuse to make the choices that feminists would like them to. For instance, if you look into emerging economies, you discover that the split between men and women in subjects that lead to very high-paying jobs, whether it's physics or computer science or maths, it's pretty equal in many cases, because those women don't have much of a choice but to just do it, get on with it, and make a living. When you look at societies that are famed for their feminist credentials, that are the most equal places in the world, Sweden, Norway, the West generally, frankly, you discover that a gap opens up, and women stop choosing to do certain subjects when they have the full range of options available to them. And what you discover is something counterintuitive, and it's that when women are more free to make decisions, when women have more options available to them, more money, and better access to the institutions, to education, to the workplace, women just won't make the choices feminists would like them to. And they don't make those choices because, yeah, unlike radical lesbian feminists, some women want a family and children.
Women are a bargain at the workplace since you only have to pay them 77 cents on the dollar.
When you tell a woman that women earn 77 cents to the dollar or 77 pence to the pound, what she's thinking in her head is, I get paid less for doing the same work as a man. Well, she doesn't. That's illegal, and it doesn't happen anywhere. The second problem with it, of course, is it doesn't take into account the different life choices that men and women make. The total earnings of men and the earnings of women doesn't take into account simple biological realities like pregnancy. It doesn't take into account the fact that women have time off to have babies. It also doesn't take into account life choices and the different priorities that women have. So, for example, women, irrespective of whether or not they have children, take longer holidays. They work shorter hours. They make less money for their firms. They tend to want to have a more balanced life. And feminist academics like Christina Hoff Sommers at the American Enterprise Institute talk about this at length. Women seem to want a more balanced life. Men, whether it's testosterone or some other kind of natural competitive instinct, are more likely to spend hours in the office wanting to beat all their colleagues and eventually make partner because they just work so hard. Women don't tend to do that, and they don't tend to do that with or without children. Now, when you control for all of this stuff, you discover that, in fact, the pay gap narrows to about perhaps 4%. Now, you may say that's still unequal, that's still unacceptable, but consider this. The amount of money that men pay into the tax system versus the amount of money that they take out is quite extraordinary. And when you start looking into the vastly disproportionate amount that men pay in, and then you consider how much women take out through pregnancy, and the fact they get sick more often, and the fact they live 5 years longer on average, and in some cases much longer than that, you realize that not only does the pay gap narrow to zero, but in fact, it's a lot more expensive being a man.
Women are much more likely than men to work part-time. Men are more likely to work full-time. And part-time work, even for the same kinds of jobs, tends to pay less than full-time work.
Yeah, look, there's different ways to look at the data, but the big picture here is women do earn less in America because they choose to. They would rather go to their daughter's piano recital than stay all night at work working on a proposal.
What?
So they end up earning less. They're less ambitious, and I think this is sort of God's way. This is nature's way of saying women should be at home with the kids. They're happier there.
I hope that your viewers do not take you, sir, seriously.
There's a great book you should read. It's called Why Men Earn More, and it's all about women choosing to put family over work, and that's why they earn less.
Having a choice does not mean that you're less ambitious, and your comments are absolutely deplorable.
On average, women are paid 21% less than men. We can ask for the same exact thing as that men do.
The myth that women get paid less for the exact same job as men comes from one poorly interpreted statistic that merely compares the median earnings of women versus men. That stat did not include people of different genders working in the same industry, the same job, or even the same amount of hours. So the pay gap myth is untrue for a few reasons, but let's start with simple economics. If I'm a business owner and I can get away with paying a woman half of what I'd pay a man for the exact same job, I'm never hiring a man again. I'd start hiring on cup size and fire every last Schwanson on staff, if only to increase profits.
It turns out that men and women invest very differently in their human capital. And we can see that in 4 different ways. First of all, educational choices. Men, for example, tend to go into fields like engineering. Women tend to go into social sciences, into psychology, into nursing. And so where men are making higher salaries as engineers or perhaps in the business world, women tend to end up in jobs for which their salaries are somewhat lower. So even though they may have the same years of schooling, the different choices they've made about their majors lead to them working in different areas and getting paid differently.
Things have never been better for women in the United States. Let's start with the supposed income gap. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, like all the other Democrat leaders, says that women make 78 cents for every dollar a man makes. This is nonsense. Reality: women work less hours than men. Women who work 40-hour weeks earn 88% of what men make. It's also nonsense, by the way, that women and men who work more than 40 hours per week work the same number of hours overall. Women who are married and have kids, it turns out, often take the time out to have their kids, which is why single women who have not married earn 96% of what men make. That other 4% gap, well, that includes the fact that men work riskier jobs and take on jobs with a higher risk of firing. Statistically, men actually prefer risk, while women prefer security when it comes to labor. Men also tend to spend their college years on non-liberal arts subjects in greater numbers than women, and they're more likely to ask the boss for a raise. In fact, the numbers are even better than that for women. Time magazine reported in 2010, quote, in 147 out of 150 of the biggest cities in the United States, the median full-time salaries of young women are 8% higher than those of the guys in their peer group. By the way, 58% of those who have post-bachelor's degrees in America are women. As Mark Perry and Andrew Biggs write in the Wall Street Journal, the numbers President Obama and his allies cite are, quote, fundamentally misleading and economically illogical.
Every time they raise minimum wage. Every time.
Inflation has gone up.
So what's happening in Seattle?
Seattle's not working.
People can afford it.
Go look in Seattle.
Right now, basically the working class can only shop at Walmart.
You are
That's
right.
it.
Every time the minimum wage is raised.
Yeah,
you were right. I admit you're right.
I mean,
you're right.
It's a minor, small little tariff just to say it's a tariff.
Well, it's a 266%. What was yours?
Okay, what do you do? 45% on everything.
Just admit
not
it.
just one little
Just admit it. Be a
What,
man.
steel only?
No, that you
we're
were
talking
wrong.
all products, buddy. All products coming from China. Yeah.
But you said 45%. It's 266%. You just say, oh yeah, I'm wrong on
How come we go to Japan and we don't see Chevys and Fords on the road over there? How come it's all Toyota and Honda, and then you come here and it's the same? You don't support your own country, so you don't support your own country.
I'm literally creating manufacturing jobs. I'm literally creating jobs that are coming from Asia right now. Look it up.
I don't care. They still
Look it up.
They manufacture here in the U.S. in the U.S. division.
No, not regardless. It's important.
Yeah. If you like manufacturing jobs, you say you employ people, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well then why would you want those jobs to go to China then, which is where they're all going?
What kind of insane statement is that? Like, who said that?
What kind of insane statement? No, it's very clear that the manufacturing
why would I want my
capital
jobs
of the
to
world
leave?
is in China.
I just created
You just
it.
said you're
What are you talking
manufacturing.
about?
Do your competitors manufacture
for jobs
in China?
to stay in China?
Do your
What sense
competitors
does that make?
manufacture overseas?
Yes.
What do you
They're
mean?
bringing their products back over the United States.
What do you manufacture?
Right.
I'm just curious.
Packaging.
Like cardboard, corrugated,
compostable, disposable packaging.
Familiar with GPC, General Packaging Corporation? No, they're in Conroe. I used to work for them.
Yeah?
Yeah, the majority of the workforce is illegal. Yeah.
Well, I don't know what to tell you.
Drops the price down for
How many
Americans,
illegals do you employ?
you know, drops the
Take
wages
that
down.
under the table. Answer. Look, he knows he has.
No, the answer is none, but you know what?
Oh, it's none.
Like,
Okay, it took you about 5
it's in
minutes.
Northeast Ohio, buddy. Go check it out.
I don't care where it is.
I mean,
doesn't matter.
he's like,
Trump's gonna be president. You'll be gone.
listen, the truth is, the reason I'm here is because of vitriol coming out of his mouth. I'm okay with Republicans and Democrats. I have no problem with either one. But what I'm seeing is the ugliest thing I've ever seen in my lifetime in politics, okay? Somebody has to come out here and say, you know what? Y'all been warned. Because if this guy gets in, it's going to get ugly. No,
It's gonna get
it
ugly
is.
with Hillary.
But it ain't going to happen.
It'll get real ugly with Hillary.
It's going to get, yeah, just like everybody thought the world was going to burn down with Obama, right? He's a dictator.
ISIS was
All
born
hell's
with
gonna break
Obama.
loose.
Look at ISIS.
It didn't happen.
Look at ISIS. They're a lot stronger than Al Qaeda ever was.
Really?
Look at
I
ISIS.
mean, come on. Are you really going to say the Middle East? Do you know who invaded Iraq, Fred? I mean, come on.
pulled us out prematurely without a single plan for
okay.
And left all our tanks
So
there.
he started the
Left all our
fire, and the
artillery.
fire department didn't stick
Well,
around long enough.
I don't agree that we should have been. Since we're talking about Donald Trump here, Donald Trump
Take our
opposed the war.
tanks out at least. Don't give them all
Okay,
our
fine,
missiles.
but you know what?
Destabilize the region.
We have what we have now, and it happened because we invaded another country that didn't invade us. We actually violated international law.
That didn't invade us, so 9/11
With an
was
international
fake.
coalition, everybody just broke international law,
You
and
do
no one was
realize
held
Iraq had
accountable.
nothing to do with 9/11, sir. You do realize that, right? Please tell me you realize that.
They did.
My God, I'm going to get dumber standing here by you if you don't realize Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. Please tell me you understand.
Who's saying that Iraq did 9/11?
When you said when
Nobody
you were
claimed
talking
that
about an attack here.
Okay, Iraq. So you want to talk about war? You want to talk about the Middle East? The Middle East is a direct line from Iraq to the Middle East problem.
The Middle East destabilized was a bad thing. The war was bad to start.
Yeah.
We
Wars is
established
bad.
that. It was
Starting
bad.
wars is bad.
But
What do you think
fast
Trump's
started
going to do when that guy? I'm going to bomb the hell out of
Trump
everybody.
opposed the war in Iraq.
No, he didn't.
Yes, he
Look it
did.
up. No, you know what?
He
You're
said
with
multiple
InfoWars.
times
Look
he
it up.
opposed the war in Iraq.
No, he didn't.
He has
It happened after the fact.
said that
Look
he
it
believed
up.
he
will defeat ISIS? Donald Trump?
Trump supports things like getting rid of
You're not going to
terrorists.
defeat
That's not
ISIS
being
until you stop invading countries. That's how you do it, because when people get bombed and killed, their kids grow up and they say, you know what? Screw that. I'm folded. What would you do? What would you do? What would you do if a plane came overhead? What would you do if a bomb came overhead and bombed you?
Up here, you react. Well, we'd be dead.
Exactly, you react. That's what's happening over there, friend.
No.
The analogy's the same.
They're radical Islamic terrorists. They're going to cut off heads whether we bomb them or not.
Why do you think people get radicalized?
You're saying it's our fault that they're radicalized.
When you bomb people and you kill them,
they get radicalized.
Okay, I think we
can
get
radicalized because of their ideology.
Wait, if you want to talk about 644 AD, then I
don't say we can all agree. It's never going to happen.
You know the response to Muslim expansion, right?
But
you understand that, right?
What was the purpose for the Crusades?
Okay,
so
you know that based
now
on...
we want to go back and we want to re-argue the Crusades.
You know that 52% of Muslims think that ISIS...
Look, guys, 2016, all right? Let's stop killing people.
All right, look, you know...
It's a real easy rule. 2016, let's stop killing people.
Have you changed?
You know what? It's about the only thing we're going to be able to do.
You go over and tell ISIS this.
Well,
you know
a generational problem.
Over 80% of Muslims...
It's a generational
So it takes someone with balls to stand up against.
That's what Trump's going to do.
And the president cannot run under treason. You guys are presidents. The president cannot be elected under treason. Build that wall! 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 A president cannot run under treason. Sir, there is alcohol on your breath. You've been drinking. You need to back off. Well, you know what? I'm sober. You may be sober, but you've been drinking. No, I haven't. You're wrong. I'm sober. I'm sober.
Right at you, dude.
33,000 emails.
33. Where they at? They're gone.
Hello, everyone. Hey, I'm just stopping by to remind you that liberals are insane. Social justice warriors are becoming more violent and triggered than ever before. Anyways, be sure to subscribe to KGP TV on YouTube and have a blessed day. Yeah, man.
Well guys, the time has come. I've officially updated my website. As you can see, it looks a lot more simple, and I've also added some new shirts. As you can see, they're epic. They're also on sale. The Liberal Tears mugs and everything, the original is still on there, and I actually have something very special to show you guys. I have one in real life. So here it is. This is what it looks like. As you can see, it's printed extremely high quality. And
when men and women hit their mid-30s, which is when people start having kids. So how should we think about this wage gap? Should we put it down to personal choices, or does sex discrimination play a role? Let's give it to you, Julie.
Well, it doesn't surprise me.
And what I didn't know is that I actually have it on both sides. So if you're right-handed or left-handed, you'll be able to see a Liberal Tears mug from either side. And don't forget, you can also order it without the smiley face if you don't like that. But it's actually the most popular one. It was pretty funny. So here you go. Here it is. Check out the new website. You can read the description if you want. Check it out. Thank you guys. Let's get into the video. See you later.
It doesn't surprise me to hear a lesbian skeptical about family values. Since after their relationships start, you know, lesbian bed death sets in, you know, there's barely, I mean, it's, look, what you have to understand about the wage gap is that
99 cents for every dollar the man makes. Now that's the average. That's the average.
It's not even the average.
See, the interesting thing is that pay is close to equal right after you graduate from college among college-educated men and women. That gap widens